Do you remember that time when everything looked bleak? You hated everybody, everybody hated you. There seemed to be no hope in the future. You were about 4 years old and someone had messed up with your toys. Today we're going to fix the road. The division between children's stories and adult stories is fairly recent. We're talking about the 20th century, basically. For example, the stories gathered by the Grimm brothers, which are German popular stories, are some of them pretty gruesome, and most of them would suffer some sort of censorship if they were to face today's standards for what is suitable for children. Although it isn't exactly 20th century phenomena, it got exacerbated in the 20th century, and part has to do with the incredible success Walt Disney had making stories. Walt Disney's work is really good, and that's why he became sort of the norm of what cartoons ought to be and what children's stories had to be. It is the narrative skill he had that sort of imposed the standard. And it is false to say that Walt Disney's movies had to do with everything being happy, you know, that we have a beautiful princess who's really nice, pretty and clever, and she has a wonderful father and a wonderful mother, and you know that she has wonderful friends that are going to join her in her adventure and basically solve everything alongside with her, and she only was fighting minor forces that were too obviously evil. It is wrong to say that Walt Disney's stories are so simple, but it isn't wrong to say that when simplified, our basic idea of what a children's story is something simple and something positive. Now, this is a contemporary deformation or limitation or simplification. This is a contemporary simplification of what a story had to be. Previous to the 20th century, I think even the 19th century, we didn't have a criteria of what should be a children's story or what something that should be an adult story. We didn't have that difference. But basically, this is not a child's world, because children tend to be honest, and therefore they are not going to lie themselves into believing that this is how the world is, you know, so simple, so basic, so positively basic. This is not what children tell themselves. These are not their stories. This is the story of an adult simplifying reality and telling that to a child. And this has become more and more not pervasive, but it has jumped genres. You know, simplicity proved to be such an effective way of telling a story that we're basically telling simple stories. You know, good versus evil. No, you know, nothing complicated, nothing elaborate. When we go back to old stories, like, for example, the Iliad, which is the story that started Western narrative, when we go back to the Iliad, we don't have good versus bad. We have the Trojans versus the Greeks, the Dorians. And there is something good in all of them, and there is something negative in both of them. You know, that is more complex. Not just good versus evil. The problem is that in the 20th century, as we are developing stories just for children that are already simplified, in the 19th century we begin to have a good versus evil story that grows in strength as narratives go. Instead of this simplified version of life being just for children, it becomes a simplified version of the adult narrative. The only difference is that besides all of these good people that are making the story, we also have someone easily identified as the bad guy. You know, the one that really just wants to be evil and that's it. He just wants to be mean. He's the bad guy and everybody knows that he's the bad guy. We have him in Star Wars, and the first Star Wars we have the Emperor, who's bad and evil. We have it in The Lord of the Rings, which is a work that had so much popularity that undoubtedly affected other stories. We have it, Sauron. Sauron is basically evil, just something that wants to hurt the world. And the orcs are the same thing. Everyone acknowledges that The Lord of the Rings is a great work, and everyone acknowledges that its main weakness is its Manichaean disposition of its characters. You know? The good characters on one side and the orcs and the evil characters on the other. A clear division between the two of them. Too clear, too easy. There are reasons for that. We are not going to tackle all of those reasons. We are going to basically say a good world for children, a simplification of the good characters and the bad characters to make them easily identifiable. We have the evil witch, we have the evil wizard, we have the good witch, we have the good wizard, we have the good characters. That's simple, that's for kids. But simplification is bad. We shouldn't simplify stories for children. Children already simplify whatever we give them. Therefore, we can give them the most complex story and they are going to simplify it. They are going to understand it in their own raw, basic way. Therefore, there is no need to simplify the story. You can make it as complex as you wish, because the children is going to make that simplification anyway. And simplifying the story for kids actually weakens the story. And when we weaken the structure of the story on a whole genre for kids, when we do that, when we weaken stories, that weakening of narrative is going to come back to haunt us. So, on one hand, we have a children's story. We have good characters, good sidekicks, and the evil one, right? Now, here we have something that is the opposite image of this one. Now, if this is a simplified narrative for children where everyone's good, this is a children's idea of what an adult story has to be, where everything's bad. And we have, unfortunately, many examples of those stories. Allow me to mention one. How about American Beauty? Have you seen American Beauty? The main character is dissatisfied with his life. His wife cheats on him. His wife is disappointed about him. The neighbor is supposedly a strict adult that also is someone who's a hidden homosexual. Therefore, he's unhappy, and all of the strictness and roughness that he has is a manifestation of his unfulfilled sexuality. Everything's bad. Everything's bad in that movie. You know, the main character is really disappointed. The children are really disappointed. They are supposed to be outsiders, although we don't know. At the end of the movie, one of the characters says, "We are never going to be the same. We are different," something like that. And you wonder, yeah, what are you doing that makes you different? The point is that, like American Beauty or American History X, for example, American History X, where we have a bad guy, you know, the guy who's racist, right? And we have that he's so mean to other people and kills, and he's so rough. And when he goes to jail, he meets the racist white guy. All of the other white guys are just some creeps that hurt him, to say the least. You know, it's the same structure. You know, everything's bad. And in American History X, we have, you know, in this extremely simplified structure of narrative, we have the easily identifiable good, because the racist white guy is going to meet the opposite of this one, the wonderful black guy. But it's all simple. It's all simple. It is all easily bad. In American History X, in American Beauty, it's all disappointment and sadness and being repressed and all of that. But if this is the world of a child, or the simplification that we generated for a child, this is also a simplification we generated for adults. supposedly adults. The world isn't that simple. It never is. If it were, it would be boring. There is this character. I don't know if I'm getting the name right, but her name is Strawberry Shortcake, I think. We can use the character Strawberry Shortcake as an example of a narrative reality that is for children, that is all pretty. And we all know that it is simple. There shouldn't be any problem with simplicity in some cases. But the problem is that the opposite of strawberry pie, if strawberry pie is all good characters plus easily identify evil, we recognize that as simple. The problem that I have, or the disappointment that I have, is that people do not recognize its opposite as simple. And that is the problem with the Road. The Road is one more movie that comes into this childish category of movies where everything's bad. There's plenty of rules that narrative has to follow because they are rules for a reason. You have to follow, for example, the idea of a challenge. There has to be a challenge in a narrative because otherwise we come with the done deal scenario. The done deal scenario is where you have no challenge, therefore you have no story. It's a done deal. When you have a problem that is too big for the hero to tackle, you know that he's going to be defeated. It's a done deal. There is no interest in the story. He's going to be defeated, or he's going to be unable to face the challenge, which is different from a tragedy. There has to be a balance between the abilities of the character and the challenges that he faces. It is a simple thing, but it is a rule that you have to follow if your story is going to be any good. The same thing goes for the environment. If everything's bad, it's also a done deal situation. Allow me to tell you a story. There was this tribe that hated life and they all died. That's it. It is as simple as that. If everything's bad, you don't like it unless you are seeing a story with a simplified mind. People that see American Beauty and like it, people that see American history and like it, people that see The Road and like it, are not being mature. They are being childish because they're thinking, oh yes, everything's bad in life. As if you were 4 years old and someone had messed up with your toys. Let's first look at The Road. Let's summarize the story, or at least let's give a proper context. What we have is that it's the end of the world. That trees are dying. Trees are dying. Imagine that. That we have no food. Oh my God, we are all going to die. My. And there is this man, a man that he's going to try to survive, and he's horrified by what he sees. He's horrified by seeing the degradation of human beings turned into cannibals, and he has to protect his weak and little kid, right? And they haven't got the strength to fight the marauders and the hunters and the people that are looking for other humans to eat. So basically we have a sad adult, a sad kid, and we have everything's bad because all the people that have survived, or most of them, are really evil hunters, right? So we have like a gazillion cannibals. They are all mean. They're all man-eating evil. That is the context of The Road. That's the story. That's the scheme of the story. It's a story about survival. And we also have a sad story about the personal life of the man who's Viggo Mortensen, right? We have that he had a wife, and her wife couldn't take it. Her wife just couldn't take it, this horrible war that had interrupted her normal life. so she commits suicide. This story is incredibly weak and it's incredibly childish. I don't know if the book is remotely like the movie, but I know that it's a book that I'm not going to read unless they pay me to do so. And they better pay me well to do so. I'm not asking you to pay me. It cannot even be a tragedy because this is a narrative. All of the elements have been chosen to be there. They are the environment of the story. The bad characters, the bad cannibals, the weakness of the wife, all of them was chosen. It isn't real life. It is how you are placing those elements to make a story. And what's the story? It's the simplistic, the criminal simplistic opposite image of the best and most basic moment of Strawberry Shortcake. It is the absolute joy, the simplistic joy, the basic happiness of living in a perfect and beautiful world, pushed to the other side, pushed just a mirror image of that simplistic world, and the mirror image of a simplistic reality. If it's good, it will be bad, but it will be just as simplistic, just as basic. If you think that Strawberry Shortcake is idiotic, this is also idiotic. Because there was this story about a man who could barely live in a world that was dying. Oh, done deal, done story. That's it. It's just pure morbid desire to feel unhappy, when the other is just childish desire to feel happy. Actually, I prefer Strawberry Shortcake to this, and they're like. Remember that the road is just one example, and the example that we're going to fix. All narratives have to be pro-life, because if not, they are weakened. Pro-life in the sense that the character has to be strong and has to wish to survive. He must have the wish and the will and the power to overcome the challenge. He might fail to do so, no problem. That is a tragedy. But if he has no wish and he has no power to overcome the challenge, then what we have is just weak characters that we won't bother, or that we shouldn't bother to remember. The problem with the road is that he's supposed to be a good author, or that the book's supposed to be good, and it's a shame. It's a shame that something like this can be called good nowadays. So that is my problem with this, that it's simple, that it's weak, that it's false tragedy, because all of the elements have been simply put into place to create a sad reality. So we are going to fix it. The first thing that is just incredibly absurd with the road is that the trees are dying. If the trees are dying, which are cells so different than ours, and if the cats and all animals have died, which is it's, I don't know if it's something so absurd, but it is negative, and therefore people think that it's some sort of complex metaphor. If we make trees give ham and jam, it's simplistic or surrealist. If we make the trees die, it's supposed to be a complex metaphor. Jesus, today's narrative has gone down the drain. If trees are dead, if animals are dead, we are dead. We are dead, that's it. We are dead. We wouldn't be able to avoid being dead. If something killed them, we would have long before died. Therefore, since all stories have to be proactive, since all stories have to show a love of life, it would be the story about the bacteria that survived. That's how it is. Let's say, for narrative's sake, that happened. Trees are dead. Then how do we fix it? How do we fix this incredibly idiotic story? The story becomes about the cannibals, because it's about those that have the strength to live, those that have to wish to live, that are going to make the story. Therefore, it doesn't become about a guy who is sadly running away from the people that hunt. He is one of the hunters. If you're going to tell the story the way it should be told, the way where the character has to become as strong as the story requires him to be, then he is the cannibal. And if not, he's a prepper. He's someone prepared for the end, and he's surviving. That's what the story should be about. There can be no complex metaphor in a world where everything's bad, because it isn't so in our own world. Because if for you our life is sad, then get rid of your life. Wouldn't that be the argument? If you've got nothing to live for, just die. Simple. We have plenty to live for. And if we run into a situation where there is nothing to live for, we die. Done deal. It's the laws of narrative. You cannot fight the laws of narrative. If you do not follow the laws of narrative, what you end up is a weak story, such as The Road. And that's it. That's how I would fix it. It would be about the preppers, about the people that prepare in order to confront the end of the world. Maybe they fail. No problem. They are ready. They have the will. They have the stamina. If it is that we have all turned into cannibals because there is no other way to survive, then it is the story about the cannibals. It would be the story about hunting, but it isn't interesting, right? Because you have destroyed too much of the environment. You have simplified negatively too much. You cannot do that and not face the consequences of having a weak story. We would have to add some sort of hope, hydroponics, something like that. You feed your humans with lettuce and then you eat your humans. It would be something like that. But there has to be a way to fix this simplified negative context, because otherwise it's a done deal and your story is done. That's the way I would fix it. I would give them hydroponics as a possibility. I would make them preppers, or I would make them the cannibals. And the kid would be the fastest to adapt to that reality. He would become a very skilled cannibal, a hunter-killer, within a matter of months. Children adapt. That is the rule of life. And if they don't, then they die. And if they die, there is no story that they can tell. That's how definitive the rules are. That is for today. I hope that even if you did not like the way I fixed the story, because it is extremely difficult to fix this incredibly simplistic and immature mess that The Road is. Although it is extremely difficult to fix this mess, hopefully I've given you some food for thought, and I hope that you liked it, were interested in it, and any proactive criticism that you may have for this video is welcomed, and you may write it down below. And thank you for your time and your attention. I hope I get to see you next time.